This morning, as I said, is to deal with 12 months in the life of Trinidad and Tobago. I've got me some exceptional guests with me. Let us start from my right is a political analyst and advocate and social media specialist, also a lecturer at the University of the West Indies. She's been with us before. Let me say good morning to Rhoda Bharath. Thank you so much for joining us.
Morning, Rennie. Morning to all of the listeners. Morning to my very, very distinguished panel. I'm wondering why I'm here. You have all of these great minds.
Well, I wanted the same thing when I initially came in, but but then I said, I just have the easy job of asking the questions. And to her right is advocate, former head of the JCC. He is known just about in every area of looking at the issues that concern us here. You will find out more about him as we walk through the morning. Let me just call the name, which will suffice. Afra, Raymond, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Well, Rennie, it's a long-held dream to be on the same radio station with you in the same studio. And in fact, what I want to say to Trinidad and Tobago, thank you to 107.7 for allowing me to join this panel. But what I want to say to Trinidad and Tobago this morning, the message is actually in the scent. The cologne I've got on is J. Hugh Gordon's ambition. And it's very important. Not only should we support local content and buy something fragrant, but there's a message in there because J. Hugh Gordon, of course, is a 400 meters champion, and he was able to maintain speed while surmounting all of the hurdles. So for Trinidad and Tobago going into 2016, ambition and J. Hugh Gordon's cologne is what is carrying us this morning.
It is very
so
clear.
That's my opening remarks.
Very clear that I omitted one part of this gentleman's credentials. Pitchman for a new cologne.
I have shares. I will declare. I have shares.
And to his left is the gentleman that you've heard many times and you've seen him many times. He's been with me a number of times. He's a political analyst. He is a lecturer. He is an exceptional mind and is one of the people that I go to all the time when I want analysis. And this morning he surprised me by deciding he's coming up to the studio. It is the first time we've had you up here.
Yeah.
Dr. Winford James, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you, Rennie B. It's the first time I'm in the studio.
Yes.
And I wanted to be in the studio this time. And when I learned who would be with me, I said, well, I have to be here.
Yes.
Let me just add to what Afra said about J. Hugh Gordon to say that he did very well academically as well.
Mm-hmm.
I think he earned a first-class honors degree.
That's correct.
Yes, and that needs to be said. So he's both an academic and a sportsman, which means that his work ethic is something to admire. And I agree with the buy local stuff. I haven't seen it yet, Afra.
It's a lovely cologne.
It is.
It's at the Kenneth Cole store in West Mall. That's where I've seen.
Okay. Is that the only place?
No, I'm sure there are other places, but that's where I've seen it.
Okay.
The hallmark of anybody and where they stand, basically, if you look in how they are producing, is going to give you a testament as to the rest of their life. I always use that as my yardstick. Gentlemen, we will be joined shortly by editor Sunity Maharaj. Sunity will be joining us, and that will comprise the panel. Okay, we've got to start somewhere, so let's start. And we'll be passing the conversation between us all morning long. This Brunch is going to be a special 2-hour feature on the life of Trinidad and Tobago in the year 2015. I want to make my start back to Gary Griffith being fired. Kamala Bisesar in February said that I did the right thing because of what is alleged against him and the AG. It puts their office in disrepute. And the reason I start with that is because I want to ask the question, how did this factor in, if it did at all, in the perception of a government already having problems in a haste to get something done, in the feeling that something was not functioning right? How did this function in the shock value political aspect of Trinidad and Tobago? Let me start with Rhoda.
Well, the first, number one, I think Gary Griffith's appointment as a Minister of National Security was pretty controversial. But it had to happen because Jack Warner had resigned and had to step down as minister. And then when Griffith came in, there were a number of controversial things that he tried to put in place. Like there was this whole business of saying that he was going to get rid of all of the criminal elements that were getting contracts. And then you realize that he couldn't actually do that. I think he was seen as pretty much a motor mouth. And then him coming on the heels of his very controversial tenure as Minister of National Security and pretty much outing the Attorney General, it further weakened the past government's position. weakened their credibility and raised a lot of questions.
Stability or instability, Afra, she makes a very good point. We should have maybe just started out from Jack Warner. Let me go back to Jack Warner with you. And let's take Jack Warner is the issue. In the beginning, once he resigned, did you look at a situation there that told you we were in for a very rough ride, and how you think that impacted on the rest of the governance for the PP government?
Well, the Jack Warner issue was never a large-scale issue as far as I was concerned. Warner was a controversial character. He's somebody I know. He was one of my school teachers. He was a controversial character. He taught me in school. He was
Taught you history.
That's right, excellent teacher.
And
a sort of a chap who courted controversy and made his way to the top of the table. But our politics is rife with people like Jack. Jack is just the largest in a long line of characters, of outlandish characters who've been in the politics. You know, I think the perception is changing in terms of what is acceptable, what is not acceptable. We now come into some interesting times between the high-level people who are wanted for extradition. Warner is just one of them. The other ones are contractors and so on. The high-level people who are wanted for extradition, who they socialize with, and in fact, who is seen in close circles with them, and circles where you have to be very carefully selected to be invited. So we're not even dealing with the natural occupation of office. So Warner would sit in Parliament across from you or me. We're dealing with a different scenario where people are actually inviting people who are close to them to celebrate in a certain sort of way. So we have a real issue to deal with the fact that we have a small society. We have a long history of bad behavior in high office. And how do we begin to turn the ship? Because the ship is the ship that we are all bound on. It's not sense to say that the hole in the ship is down on that end of the ship and I'm sitting on this end of the ship. We're on one ship together. How do we begin to turn the ship around? How do we begin to plug the holes as the ship makes its course? This is the whole thing in terms of intervening in this sort of debate and this sort of discourse and trying to criticize what we could actually do to fix something and to bring us onto a better path.
Dr. James, you started out looking at it because what you saw here was not just Gary Griffith, but you saw the AG involved in this. And it looked to the top of the year. A couple of people were surprised. A lot of people were not, but it included Mr. David West in this whole situation. When you looked at how the year started, what did it say to you as a political analyst looking in?
That we were going to get more of the instability that we were beginning to get accustomed to. Kamala Prasad-Bissessa's tenure was quite fractious. She kept restructuring the cabinet or reshuffling the cabinet. She had to fire ministers and appoint new ones. MSJ had left the partnership. Dukaran was threatening to leave. In fact, he left in April, I believe. So that the partnership was fracturing, and the thing that was holding it together, or holding something together, was Kamala Prasad-Bissessa's favorability. That's the word that the polls used, her likability. Somehow she was able to be apart from all the chaos that was, at which she was at the center, but
a Teflon personality when
somehow
because nothing was
she
being
had
attached to
public
her. Yes.
appeal. She had appeal within her own party, and I suppose the wider partnership, but she also had appeal in the wider public. But around her was chaos and bacchanal, as we put it. I prefer the word bacchanal, actually. We had bacchanal, one after the other. And somehow she was able to hold it together, but it was breaking up around her. And of course, it did break up, as you know, at the very end, where they went into the elections with the COP having lost its constituents.
I'm going to come into that that whole area leading up.
The TOP was decimated in 2013 and did not know it. You know, as I said, MSG had gone. NJAC was not making a contribution. They were quite cosmetic, the most cosmetic of components in the partnership. So I'm just saying, she thought, in fact, she said it, you know, I am the magnet that will bring all the forces together and keep the PNM out.
We will be looking at a lot of the government, because that, you know, essentially is where we're looking at for the year gone by. But there were a number of attendant issues there. One of the issues that's still included in the government, after I'm going to come to you on this one to begin, is the whole question of the cost to attorneys. that hit us in March. It went on to April when we got the AG lawyer report that showed that, in fact, so much money was being paid to lawyers. This was, of course, raised by the then leader of the opposition, Dr. Keith Rowley, in Parliament in March. It revealed that the number of attorneys selected to do work with the government was a very small group. A lot of money was being paid in addition to, when the review came out looking at the amount of money being paid, we found out $7.7 million being spent to the Privy Council just to defend issues out there. So two things happen here. Is whether this was a situation out of control is what I'm asking the panel. Was the kind of money spent out of control? Many have said we've heard a lot of utterings that it's a select group. But was it in fact a select group? And it did raise the question of the Privy Council and the CCJ. So we've got a number of issues that were tied in there.
Yeah, well, the whole question of legal fees is a very ticklish one. Not because they're lawyers concerned, but because it's our money concerned. And we have to be mindful of whether in the new procurement scenario, the one we've been campaigning for, myself and my erstwhile colleagues, you have to be mindful of the fact that the question of procurement of legal services is an important one. How does one procure legal services in a manner that is transparent and actually serving the public interest well? In other words, getting the best lawyer for the particular case. Now, coming to the particular questions you raised, Rennie, with relationship to the amount of money spent and so on, there were some figures revealed in the past that were quite scandalous. One thing that jumps out and sticks me in the eye, I wouldn't forget these things, is that there was a chap, one of the senior counsel, a member of the Inaba, Dr. Sir Fenton Ramsahoy, who is a Guyanese lawyer who practices here and has a successful practice in the Caribbean and highly rated, a highly profiled attorney and so on. Dr. Ramsahoy, senior counsel, gave an opinion, and I believe it was a compact opinion, less than 10 pages long, in relationship to Invaders Bay, which was a matter that was litigated, whether the Ministry of Planning actually followed the Central Tenders Board Act. And that compact opinion, it was reported in the Sunday Express on that occasion, and the fee for that compact opinion was $418,000 TT dollars plus VAT. Now, that is an astonishing amount of money. I mean, it's not in my place to describe it as improper. Other people who are more learned than me would have to do that. But as somebody who occasionally has to sign those kinds of checks, that's an astonishing amount of money for a compact opinion.
So roughly 40,000 a page.
Yeah, so it's a lot of money. Now, the other thing I want to say is that to put the thing to snap the thing into political focus, and we have to we're oscillating between a period when the partnership was in office and the current period when the PNM is in office, and we have to put a little focus on things. I believe that shortly after the PNM took office, the current Attorney General, who is of course Mr. Faris Al-Rawi, gave an extensive presentation to Parliament on legal fees that had been paid on various things. And I have to say that Mr. Al-Rawi is a very eloquent and able speaker. And he's somebody who certainly in terms of my own relationship with him, we have a sound relationship. But I would encourage him the next time he speaks. Mr. Al-Rawi, give us the names. You named the top three people. You named the top three sums of money.
Yeah.
I would like to be able to attach names to those sums of money. After all, it's coming out of my taxes. And speaking for people in Trinidad and Tobago who pay taxes and pay VAT, and our oil and gas goes to pay for it. We need the names. We need to have a shift. And in fact, what's ironic is that when the partnership was there, we got the names. Yes. And we'd like to continue that. So, Mr. Ravi, the next time around, let us have the names, please, so we can know who was earning these phenomenal sums of money.